Hello everyone and welcome again to A Voice in the Wilderness. I apologize, just like my last video, I have the sun hitting me a certain way. It's the only time I can do the videos, so hopefully you can see the bright face a little bit better. Today I wanted to talk about, because I learned many things being in the forest. I'm in the forest all the time, as much as I can. I hate going to the city and working in the city, the traffic, the loud noise. You'll hear me rant a lot about it. But before I get off and all that, I went on a hike a few days ago. And this hike I went to, it's not a trail that's maintained. It's not a trail, you're supposed to find a waterfall, and the trail is chaotic, the forest is chaotic. It's honestly a little frightening. If it wasn't for the river and being closer to the road, I'm pretty sure you would be lost in this hike unless, you're an expert hiker and you mark where you go. And yes, for people that want to argue, you don't have to be an expert hiker for that, but there are people that just go and walk and hike. But anyways, as I'm hiking, the terrain was pretty bad. Which means you have to constantly look down, you have to watch your step. There's sharp, jagged rocks, there's kind of like just drops out of nowhere, then you can walk straight and this kind of drops. Nothing that major, nothing too bad, just if you're not paying attention, you probably can twist an ankle and fall. But then as I got further and further in, I started getting more and more lost. So what I started doing is I started putting markers and making a trail to make sure where I'm going. And I also looked up and looked around to make sure and look for certain special like trees or something that really stood out so I could find my way back. And like I said, the terrain was getting so rough you have no choice but to look down. But it made me think about life. And the reason why I said at the beginning of the video, I spend a lot of time in the forest and I learn a lot, is the forest will teach you things. Nature will teach you things. Crows will teach you things. Deer and bear will teach you things. Coyotes at night will teach you things if you're open. I have a video about nature touching you, not you touching nature. And I kind of realized this is a life lesson. Because the last few years have been pretty traumatizing. That's how I recognized this lesson. When you're sad, depressed, when you're going through hell, when life is hopeless. And I'm not talking about a teenage breakup, and I'm not talking about you're losing your crappy job. I'm talking you're facing real traumatizing situations. It's very easy to look down all the time. It's very easy to get lost looking down all the time. And if you're not careful about looking down all the time, you're going to look up and you're going to want to get back, or you're going to look up and want to get to a better place. And you got so far out, all of a sudden you're lost. You can't remember how to get to where you're at. And this terrain, that could happen very easily. I hike all the time. There are some hiking trails you're never going to get lost. Even if you go off by yourself and say, screw you to the forest ranger, I'm going to go take this trail over here. Because they suggest not to do that because you can get lost. You're not going to get lost. But there's other terrain where it all kind of looks the same. There's hills that's kind of hidden. The further out you go, all of a sudden it's like, uh-oh, where am I at? And again, like I said, it's easy to go through traumatizing bad situations looking down. And then you look up and you're lost. The looking down symbolizes, I need to drink tonight to get over this trauma. I need to go party tonight to get through this. I don't know who I am anymore, and you start doing things that are not like you. You just keep going, not taking 1 minute to stop and set up a marker for yourself. That marker can be taking a deep breath, and maybe tonight's not a good night to go out with my friends because I may end up in a darker, deeper situation. And I know this is true because I have been through this, and I go to Alcoholics Anonymous because of my past, as well as I help volunteer a little bit with a few people on helping them, and I hear their stories, and this is exactly what happens. You get out further and further and further. It's like being on a paddleboard or a raft, and you're not fighting the tide, and the tide just kind of keeps taking you out. That happens. There's times I go paddleboard and you see a sight that's just kind of cute or adorable, or you look at the deer, or something happens. And when there's wind and you're not paying attention, you look back at the shore and you're like, uh-oh, I'm pretty damn far. Not a big deal on a lake, but it can be a big deal in the ocean. So when you're going through trauma and pain and you walk in through this dark, jagged valley, don't be afraid to look up once in a while and see where you're at. Don't be afraid to look at the tiny things that give you leverage, which is hope. Look up and see where you are. Look for the markers of where you're at in life. You may have lost everything, but when I was walking through this trail, it was the dead trees that really identified how I could get back to where I was. And again, you may have lost everything, but there's a few things that are just hanging on for life that you need to look at to see where you're at. Because if you don't look at those things and you don't pay attention to those things, you're going to get further and further out there and you're going to get lost. It's the small things. Those dead trees were very, very important to get you back to where you need to be. You're not supposed to look at the past. Sometimes by looking back. Sometimes there's all kinds of philosophies about looking back. And all of them have their place. All of them are different philosophies, and all of them have their place. You know, you look at Sodom and Gomorrah, and when the wife looked back, she turned into a pillar of salt. That would apply to when there's something so traumatizing, you don't go back to the problem. But we're not talking about that. We're talking you lost everything because you trusted the wrong person. Something happened to a child. A divorce happened. There's things outside that situation that can help you get through what you're going through. So as you're going through this valley of the shadow of death, don't forget to put markers where you're at. Markers are borders and boundaries. Markers are, before this becomes a problem, I'm not going to go there. Because you're in a state that you can make more problems for yourself, more problems than you ever have had. You're going to find yourself doing things that you probably never thought you would do. There's times, and I see this all the time with people I work with, I've been through it and I've been on the other side of it. People go through divorce, and sometimes during the separation and divorce, they make the biggest messes and biggest problems that they ever have in their life, and they find out maybe their husband and their wife wasn't so bad because they had to go out and party and play, and they found themselves in worse situations than if they just would have worked through the marriage. So to recap this philosophy, put your markers down where you're at. Stop and look for the landmarks for you to come back. Because again, it's very easy to get lost looking down at the ground in your turmoil, in your trauma. You have to take a deep breath and look forward and look up and look around you, see where you're at. Because you're in a place where you're lost. And you need to find your way back home. And your way back home is yourself. You've lost yourself because of going along with other people, other situations, your own stupid ideas. When people say, I've lost myself and I need to find myself, you don't involve yourself with more things you carry with you, more things that fill the mind. When you're trying to find yourself, which means you're trying to find your way back home, it's time to discover you. Alcohol is not going to help you find yourself. The guy down the street that thinks you're cute is not going to help you find yourself. Going to a festival and experimenting with a workshop that's going to put more baggage in your life is not working on yourself. Going to a rock concert is not finding yourself. Am I saying a rock concert is evil? I am not saying a rock concert is evil. But I think some of you know what I mean. When you're lost and broken and you're trying to find yourself, you're lost, you're going deeper into those woods, you're going deeper into this valley without stopping and looking at the markers. Where am I? How do I get back? You're just going to keep going until you get so deep in that valley, it's going to be very hard to get back. That's another lesson. I was smart enough to stop where I was at and try to head back, because there's only so many markers you can remember. There's only so many trees you can remember. There's only so much of the path that will register back in your mind. Because each new place you go, you have to now learn that place to be able to backtrack to get back to yourself. So if you're lost and you're losing yourself, now's the time to stop. Now's the time to stop and start backtracking. Now's the time to stop drinking. Now's the time. Tonight's the night you're not going to go out and party with your friends. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. Tonight's the night, if you're crying every night, then maybe it's time to join a gym. Maybe it's time to join jiu-jitsu. Maybe it's time to start painting. Maybe tonight's the night you start praying. Anyways, before I ramble on and this becomes a meaningless message, I want to say thank you for tuning in to A Voice in the Wilderness. I ask you to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because I do get shadow banned on some of my videos. If you would like to donate to A Voice in the Wilderness, I'm going to have a link down below that helps me to continue to bring forward these videos. It helps me also to put these retreats together. And it also helps some people that really want the retreats that can't afford it. It helps put them in our camp during the summer. This next summer, hopefully in 2025, I am hoping to have more camps and more workshops. Anyways, more information on that later. Again, thank you for tuning in.